It starts with 3 imperfect notes, that lazy, wobbling jingle everyone says they remember from childhood, but no one can quite hum right. Most days I try to drown it out with the engine, grinding the gas until the noise blurs into static. But the tune always curls back through the vents, thin as breath, right into my skull. The speakers crackle while I crawl down Maple Street. Porch lights flicker in perfect rhythm, like the melody is tapping on the bulbs. I glance in the mirror just as a little boy on the sidewalk begins to hum before the truck even turns the corner. He's already mouthing the words. There shouldn't be words. And every hair on my arms lifts. By the time I brake, he's gone. No footprints. Just the echo of that warped carnival lullaby bleeding out of my speakers. The jingle stutters once, like a skipping vinyl, and a whisper of laughter squeezes through the distortion. I slam the volume knob hard enough to snap it off. People think summer is the sweet season. They've never heard this song crawl up their street at dusk. My route winds through the kind of town that still names streets after trees no one's seen in decades. I start near the lakefront, where the fog hangs low and damp, then creep south through the cul-de-sacs. There are 52 houses, all vinyl siding and mailbox flags that never drop. Each driveway tells me what kind of night it will be. Bikes piled carelessly mean tips, porch lights off mean don't stop unless someone's waving. The old 1987 Whippy Delight still runs because I keep it running. I replaced the belts, rewired the speakers, patched the ice bin compressor 3 times. It smells like antifreeze pretending to be vanilla. Decals of faded cartoon cones peel off in scabs, and that ridiculous smiling penguin on the hood has lost an eye. Kids point, laugh, and still hand over cash like it's magic, proof that nostalgia has a sugar coating. I clock in at 6:30, clock out when the sky starts resembling oil. 4 hours of driving, jingling, waving, and pretending not to notice the damp air working its way under my collar. It isn't just heat, there's a chill hiding in it, the kind that says storm or sickness, maybe both. Sometimes the same kids show up in different neighborhoods on the same night. I tell myself it's coincidence, cousins visiting. Still, the pattern nags, same faces, new addresses, same humming along before I arrive. I jot times and cross streets in a notebook, half joke, half ritual. The truck coughs and rattles beneath me like an old dog refusing the vet. If it dies, so does my paycheck. And yet each evening I whisper a thank you when it starts, as if something else might be listening under the hood. I didn't notice the card until my 3rd week on the job. It was wedged behind the registration papers and a stack of expired coupons. Laminated, yellowed, edges warped from heat. Across the top, someone had typed, "Driver Regulations, Model PD47 Music Unit." Underneath were 7 rules. The first few looked routine enough. Check fuel before departure, maintain freezer temperature. Then came the odd ones. 3. Do not alter or remove the cassette. 5. Serve children one at a time. Do not let them sing together. 7. Refrain from operating within audible range of church bells. I laughed aloud in the cab. Maybe an urban legend. Small towns love their folklore. Still, curiosity had teeth. I reached for the in-dash cassette slot, gray plastic older than me, and felt a sliver of metal jammed tight inside. Removing it would have needed tools and probably voided whatever ancient magic kept this engine sputtering. At the depot, Ray, a driver who'd been at it since the 90s, limped up with his permanent squint. "Keep that red tape where it is," he muttered when he saw me staring at the dash. "Rule 3 keeps them from coming out." He said it like a man quoting scripture, then coughed himself into silence. "Them who?" I asked. Ray just rubbed frostbite scars along his jaw. "If the jingle stops mid-verse, don't wait, drive." He handed me a popsicle, refused my cash, and shuffled to his truck. Same model, same smiling penguin logo. His speakers clicked on before the key turned. For a second, both our trucks hummed in perfect harmony, and something in that twin vibration tugged low behind my eyes. That night, parked by the lake, I studied the laminated card again, the plastic sheening in the dashboard light. Beneath Rule 7, someone had scrawled in pen, "This list is incomplete." The ink was fresh. When the engine sputtered that evening, I thought of Ray's ash-colored lips mouthing along to a song I couldn't quite catch. Maybe superstition matters more when it's printed on company stationery. I tucked the card back like a lucky charm, and when the melody began from the speakers, off-key yet unbearably precise, I didn't dare reach for the volume this time. By July, the jingle owned the town. It bounced down every cul-de-sac before I arrived, carried by echoes that didn't belong to any speaker I knew. I'd turn onto Birch Lane and find kids already lining up, shoulders swaying in silent rhythm, lips moving a breath ahead of the melody, like they were remembering instead of reacting. Dogs hated me. They'd bark themselves hoarse, then go rigid once the first high note hit. Car alarms hiccuped and fell into the beat, and sometimes wine chimes from porches clattered in matching measure. I started timing it. Exactly 23 seconds after the tune began, light bulbs across 2 blocks would dim then flare, as if the current bowed to the song's tempo. Parents began noticing too. They didn't confront me directly, but I felt their stares from windows. One night, a man grabbed my wrist while I handed his son a cone. He asked if I'd ever heard lyrics under the music, like someone whispering names. I told him it was pareidolia, brains finding faces in static. He looked at me as if I'd confessed to murder. A week later, his house emptied overnight. Mail piled, lawn browned. Nobody remembered a for rent sign. I thought about quitting. Then the truck's battery started charging itself even when I left the lights on. The freezer maintained perfect temperature without humming. Each payday envelope came with an extra 20 I hadn't logged. Leaving felt impossible, like scraping off a tattoo. Still, I tried. On my night off, I disconnected the speaker wires, tossed the plug adapters into the trash. Yet, when I started the engine, the music returned through nothing. No cassette spinning, no power light. It poured from the air vents, the floor panels, even the crack of the steering column. The harmony sounded fuller somehow, layered with distant laughter, faint as recordings of playgrounds left in rain. Later that evening, I cut the route early and parked behind an abandoned strip mall. Silence felt like a wound sealing itself. Then a faint knock came from the freezer. A single tap 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 following the beat exactly. I pulled the handle, half certain I'd find a raccoon or worse, just fog curling over untouched boxes. My phone buzzed. A voicemail with no number played 6 seconds of the jingle ending on a note I'd never heard before, sharp, human, inhaling. When I replayed it, the audio registered 0 decibels, yet I still felt it vibrating through the bone behind my ear. That night, I didn't dream music. I dreamt silence that clicked and blinked like pupils widening in the dark, and beneath it, something waiting for the verse to finish. Near the end of July, just as the daylight began bruising toward orange, a little girl waved me down outside the elementary school playground. Her name tag, probably from day camp, read Ellie. She wasn't giggling like the others. She stood apart, one sneaker toe drawing circles in chalk dust while everyone else begged for bombs pops. When I leaned from the window, the tune looped behind her words. "Can you please turn it off before it finishes the verse?" Her voice trembled, the way voices tremble when they repeat someone else's warning. I smiled, thinking maybe her parents were tired of the noise. "Sure thing, kiddo. Music stops when ice cream starts." I twisted the dial just as the song neared the last refrain. The knob refused to move. Plastic fused to metal. The remaining bars bled through. Slower, almost human. Ellie's face pinched. "You shouldn't let it end," she whispered, clutching her coin pouch so tight the zipper snapped. A thread of blood traced from her nose. She wiped it in silence, like it was normal. I shoved the dial with both palms. Nothing changed. The tune hit the final note and shattered into white noise that didn't belong to speakers. Every kid went still, gazes aimed somewhere beyond me. Then, as if waking, they cheered, ordered cones, chased each other in happy chaos. Only Ellie walked away backward, never turning her back on the truck. The next morning, a headline caught my eye while buying gas. 2 children missing in Riverside neighborhood. The photograph showed the group from last night, frozen mid-smile, Ellie half-cropped at the edge. I carried the paper to the truck, telling myself correlation isn't proof. Still, when I turned the key, the cassette clicked 3 times, 3 perfect beats matching the number of missing names that would appear by the end of the week. That evening, while I served Rocky Road to a teenage couple, a high-pitched harmony slipped under the melody. It wasn't wind, it was children's voices matching pitch for pitch, -2. I told myself not to count again. I drove straight home that night without finishing the route, parked the truck backward in my driveway so the speakers faced the woods. My pulse hadn't slowed since Ellie's warning. I needed to know what lived inside that jingle. I set my phone on the dash and hit record, then let the music run until the coolant light flicked on. When I played it back, the screen showed time passing but no waveform, just a faint hiss like air escaping from a balloon. Cranking the volume, I caught fragments, children laughing, something like a carousel creaking beneath them, and one low note too deep for cheap speakers to handle. The pitch vibrated through my ribs even after I pulled my earbuds out. I emailed the file to Marty at the music shop downtown. He's the one who repairs old amplifiers and still believes vinyl spirits are a real phenomenon. He called 10 minutes later, whispering like we were planning a crime. "You've got frequencies up to 80 kilohertz on this thing. Dogs can't even hear that. You record through a human microphone?" Yeah, my phone." Silence crossed the line, then the click of him lighting a cigarette. "Then something's using your hardware like a throat." That sentence stayed inside me all evening. At 2 a.m., I woke to the same song, soft and distant, floating outside my window. No engine, no motor noise, just the ice cream melody weaving through the trees. I grabbed a flashlight and snuck to the driveway. The truck glimmered under moonlight, windows fogged from the inside, as if something breathed behind the glass. Through that frost, a shadow moved behind the steering column, lifting one hand slowly to mimic turning an invisible key. The headlights flared on by themselves. My phone in my pocket started playing the unfinished recording, blasting static that pulsed with voices forming a half-spoken sentence. "Play it again." I stumbled backward into the ditch, light sweeping over my porch. When I blinked, the truck's lights were off, engine quiet. For a second, I thought I'd imagined the whole scene, until I saw melting tire impressions on the gravel leading toward the road. No footprints, no oil drips, just the faint black groove of rubber carved perfectly into the asphalt and fading a block away. The freezer door was open when I checked. No wind that could have done it. Inside, packages were wet but not melting, each carton cross-marked with a greasy fingerprint too long to be human. The air smelled exactly like the song, sour sweetness balanced on the edge of rot. Somewhere deep in the metal panels of the truck, the static whispered one more time, slow, gurgling syllables that almost shaped my name. Sleep never came easy after that night, so I spent the dark hours scavenging the internet for the truck's VIN. One search led to a PDF scan of an old insurance ledger, another to microfilm at the county records office. The name tied to the original registration, Thomas G. Lyle, driver, summer 1954. Notes beside it read, "Deceased, presumed." The clerk, a retiree named Hendricks, remembered something. That old Whippy route? They shut the company down after the hospital incident. He said incident like he didn't want ownership of the word. He slid a folder across the counter. Yellow photographs stuck together. A truck identical to mine, parked beside a burned-out children's ward. "Gas leak?" I asked. "Officially," Hendricks lowered his voice. "Unofficially, people heard the song a week before it happened. Kids at the pediatric unit were humming in their sleep. Lyle was bringing samples to room A7. Nobody's been able to open that wing since." The pages rattled like paper trying to scream. There was a typed interview clipped in back. A nurse describing a low droning tune coming from the freezer while the fire alarm blared. She said the patient charts disappeared afterward, blank folders left in place like teeth pulled clean. I copied everything, drove home in silence, and pushed the truck key under my mattress. For hours I stared at the ceiling, hearing faint carnival notes surfacing from the air vents, the melody dragging a half second behind my heartbeat, off sync, as if another world was struggling to match time with ours. At dawn, I found a new voicemail from a blocked number. It contained nothing but the hospital's PA static and one crisp, masculine breath at the mic. A whisper followed, gravel rough yet kind. "Don't drive past churches." I deleted it instantly, but when I checked the glove box later, the laminated rule card had changed fonts, updated, professional again, as if reprinted overnight. Rule 7 had a new line beneath it. A7 has been moved. The first time the song reversed itself, I thought I'd finally snapped. It happened one humid evening in August when the air was thick enough to drink and the horizon looked bruised. I'd already decided this route would be my last. The truck reeked of ozone, and every pause between verses felt like something breathing through the speakers. I turned onto Cedar Row. No customers, just sprinkler mist glowing pink under the street lamps. The melody started as usual, bright, tinny, relentless. Then a hitch, like a needle slipping backward on a record. Each note folded in on itself until the song began playing in perfect reverse. I killed the engine, yanked the key. The tune kept going, deeper now, vowels riding backward words, my name tangled among them. Then came a single, unmistakable sentence, clear as a man whispering inside my earphones. "Don't finish the route, Tom." Tom, the first driver's name. I sat frozen while the truck hummed like a throat clearing. The mirrors vibrated, showing a figure in the driver's seat 20 years older, head tilted at the exact same angle as mine. His mouth moved with the reversed melody, shaky and pleading. I should have fled right then, but curiosity is its own parasite. "Who are you?" I whispered. The reflection blinked. My voice came through the speakers, raw and frightened. "You have to burn it. It feeds when it finishes a verse." Every light in the cab flared. The reverse jingle accelerated until it sounded like rushing air through teeth. My reflection's eyes melted into twin cones of static. Then smoke began curling from the tape deck, sweet like caramel, but underneath it, the rot of freezer burn. Instinct took over. I ripped the battery cables. Silence fell hard enough to ring. For a heartbeat, everything stayed still. Then the truck's temperature gauge slammed from cold to max heat, and the headlights flashed 3 times. When I dared step outside, the world was colorless. Street lamps flickered in unison, all tuned to the rhythm of that backward song still echoing somewhere beyond hearing. I could swear the asphalt itself pulsed faintly underfoot. By the time I returned home, static buzzed inside my jaw like dental shock. In the bathroom mirror, my tongue was stained a pale fluorescent blue, the same shade as the old company logo. I tried washing it off. It hummed at the same pitch as the truck's idling motor. That night, I dreamed of standing in a corridor of hospital rooms labeled in crayon. A child in each doorway mouthed the final bars backward, harmonizing until their faces blurred into the same smiling penguin. They reached out, thousands of sticky hands, and in chorus whispered, "Don't let it end again." I woke with frost on my pillow and that melody still running in reverse behind my teeth. The address on the registration led me 20 miles out of town, down a road that never appeared on Jeep. The asphalt gave way to gravel, then to cracked concrete stitched with weeds. A half-collapsed sign read, "Whippy Delight Cold Storage and Distribution." The warehouse squatted against the horizon, windows filmed with frost, though the air outside was 80 degrees. The padlock on the loading door had already been snapped. Metal curled like something had walked through instead of breaking in. Inside, the air tasted electrical. The motion of each breath left vapor trails that hung far too long. Rows of ancient freezers lined the floor, their power cords buried under layers of frost. Every few seconds, a dull hum rolled through the building, as if something enormous was drawing breath. At the center stood one walk-in unit still running, its door rimmed in new steel, brandless. Above the handle, someone had carved A7. The second I touched it, the song whispered from within, not tinny like speakers, but symphonic, echoing through metal as if the entire freezer were a throat. Each vibration pushed warm air into my face, carrying a scent like melted sugar and hospital disinfectant. I turned the latch. Cold exploded outward. For a blink, it looked empty. Then my flashlight beam drifted to a far corner. Transparent shapes clung inside the walls, half submerged in ice. Children's outlines blurred with tubes of color, trapped like insects in amber. Some pressed their palms toward the glass. Their mouths were open, forming sound that only existed as ripples in the frost. One face I knew immediately, Ellie. Frozen mid-breath, eyes unfocused, mouth rounding the beginning of a word that might have been run. The flashlight flickered. Music swelled in reverse, louder than any orchestra. Tiny flakes of frost lifted from the floor and danced in circles, forming quick silhouettes of skipping kids. They beckoned toward the truck keys in my pocket. When I stepped back, the light over the freezer blinked to red, and from deep inside came a single cheerful chord, ending the verse I'd heard all summer. The frost pulsed once, then went still. I don't remember driving home. It's as if the world skipped a few frames, and suddenly I was in my driveway with the engine whispering its low, contented idle. All I knew was that the freezer in the warehouse had sealed shut behind me with a hiss that sounded like applause. Every instinct screamed to torch the truck, follow the reverse voice's command. But another, smaller voice said, finish the route. So I filled the tanks, stocked whatever product still lay frozen solid, and at sunset rolled out under a sky the color of faded denim. The melody began before I touched the starter, pure and slow. If the damn thing wanted a finale, I'd give it one. Neighborhood after neighborhood slid by, empty porches watching me pass. The air felt thinner. Leaves curled in my wake as though the truck pulled at them magnetically. Each window I passed showed kids motionless behind glass, hands pressed flat. A few adults, too, their eyes glazed, pupils vibrating to the beat. The music wasn't just playing anymore, it was choreographing. At the first intersection, the streetlights turned green in perfect rhythm, guiding me forward. My phone flashed unknown numbers that spelled fragments of lyrics across the screen, half phonetic, half nonsense syllables like reversed lullabies. By Oak Drive, snow started falling, though the temperature read 76. The flakes melted into streaks on the windshield that formed faces, open-mouthed, singing the counter-melody I'd heard in the freezer. Somewhere behind the clouds, thunder chimed in three-note sync. I laughed, loud, manic, because of course the weather was keeping time. Halfway through the route, my radio crackled with a newscaster's voice stuck on loop. Amber Alert, Riverside District. Her final syllables dragged into the same pitch as my horn. I wanted to stop, but the pedal refused. Every muscle in my leg locked. The truck steered itself down the old parade route straight to the elementary school. Floodlights flicked on, one after another, as I rolled into the lot. The speakers blared the opening bar and echoed back from the brick walls in pure stereo. Children's drawings still hung in the hallway windows, paper ghosts fluttering to a rhythm older than music. Inside the cab, frost climbed the dashboard like ivy. My breath came out foggy white despite the summer heat. Somehow I knew this was the last verse, the one that would close whatever loop Tom Lyle had opened 70 years ago. I gripped the wheel until my palms cracked. Take me instead, I muttered, not sure to whom. The jingle stuttered, confused, then dropped 2 octaves. Metal groaned underfoot. The hood emblem, the stupid smiling penguin, turned its beak toward me and split apart into a perfect speaker cone. From it came hundreds of synchronized whispers singing the same single line in child voices. Thank you for the ride. The freezer light in back flared blue. The truck surged forward, carrying me down the dark road like a finale float in a parade no one else could see. The melody held a final note that went on far too long, until sound became heat and heat became nothing but light. When my vision cleared, the truck was idling in the empty soccer field behind the school. Fog had rolled in thick as milk. The speakers hummed with an expectant silence, the kind that always comes before a conductor's first downbeat. Then the grass began to move. At first I thought it was wind, but the mist shifted in organized rhythm, forming rows of small figures. One by one, children stepped out of the haze, barefoot, dripping lake water. Their eyes glowed the dull yellow of sodium streetlights. Each held a melted ice cream cone that never dripped. In the front stood Ellie, her ponytail frozen stiff like candle wax. "You came back," she said, voice echoing through every speaker at once. The words layered, hundreds of Ellies speaking in near-perfect unison. I didn't have a choice. She smiled. Everyone says that. She lifted her cone and the melody began again, softer, reversed, but with perfect harmony. Behind her, the other children hummed a second line. The ground vibrated with low frequency. My truck's mirrors rattled. It wasn't just a song, it was infrastructure, wiring buried in the dirt, airwaves crossing bone. The tune stabbed through frequencies my body could feel but not hear. My heartbeat adjusted to their tempo. Ellie climbed onto the hood, her bare feet leaving frost prints that smoked. She leaned down until her face was inches from the windshield. "Someone has to drive," she whispered. The whisper condensed on the glass, words frosting white. I shouted that I wasn't the guy they wanted, that I'd destroy the truck, end the song, stop the cycle. The chorus laughed, hungry, sweet, forgiving. Every cone melted simultaneously, syrup turning black as oil. The puddles shaped into musical notes that burned into the grass. "Burning doesn't work," Ellie said, and tapped her cones 3 times on the hood, each tap another knockout blow to silence. The headlights burst on, flooding the field in sterile hospital light. All around, children swayed in slow metronomic movements. Their humming slipped inside my skull until words formed. "You finish the verse or the world stops remembering us." Then, all at once, they sang the final bar, the full, completed verse that I'd never allowed to end. The sky split like a drumhead. Light poured down, a physical column of white sound. The truck levitated an inch, shaking as if it would shake apart. I opened the door and staggered out, blinding heat beating against my back. The kids' voices rose higher, their bodies dissolving into silhouettes of static. Ellie looked back at me, mouthing thank you, before collapsing into a flurry of snowflakes that chimed as they struck the ground. The song stopped abruptly. The wind reclaimed the silence. All that remained was the faint afterring of a single note and the dim glow of the penguin emblem, still pulsing in time with something beneath the earth. Morning crept in slow, hazy, almost polite. I woke, slumped in the driver's seat with dried frost on my jacket and the faint taste of sugar on my tongue. Smoke drifted from what used to be the school field, a perfect circle of ash rimmed by crystallized grass. The ice cream truck rested at its center, blackened but upright, windows melted opaque. Sirens wailed in the distance. I watched their lights bounce closer, thinking about how the world felt muffled, like someone had wrapped everything in thick cotton. Even my own breathing reached my ears half a second late. When the firefighters arrived, they found me sitting cross-legged in the dirt, hands resting on my knees as if I were waiting for applause that would never come. One asked what fuel I'd used. I said none. He stared at the smoldering chassis. "The freezer's still cold," he murmured. They hauled me into an ambulance, bundled me under blankets, asked the usual, drugs, head trauma, next of kin. I opened my mouth to answer, but heard the jingle rise again somewhere across town, faint and far, threading between radio frequencies. Both paramedics froze mid-sentence, eyes glassy. Outside the rear window, another truck rolled past the intersection, a mirror image of mine, paint unscorched, penguin bright-eyed and clean. Children ran after it, laughing. I screamed at the driver through the glass, but the sound left my throat as silence. He didn't look at me. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he was me. A final chime rang out, perfectly clear, carried on morning air. For the first time in weeks, there were no echoes afterward, just absence, light as snowfall, heavy as guilt. When I opened my eyes again, the world was blue. Not sky blue, ice blue, the kind that eats color out of everything else. I sat behind a steering wheel made of frost-rimmed chrome, breath fogging the windshield from both sides. Someone had scrubbed my name off the dash plaque and etched a new one beneath it, T.G. Lyle. A child's laughter echoed from behind the freezer door. I turned. It swung open easily this time, revealing aisles of perfectly stacked cones glowing with their own pale light. Each swirl pulsed like a heartbeat. The radio dial flickered to life, tuning through bursts of static until it found a station playing my song. The same melody, somehow slower, sweeter. I tried to cover my ears, but the tune played from the cartilage itself. Every note felt like instructions I already knew. There was no grief anymore, no fear, no question, only purpose. I started the engine. The motor purred with anticipation, gauges climbing to steady green. Outside, fog parted to reveal a dirt road lined with eager silhouettes, small hands raised in greeting. I smiled because I understood their hunger. It sounded like rhythm. When I pressed the horn, the jingle began in perfect pitch. My voice joined automatically, blending under the melody like harmony long rehearsed. Through the mirrors, I glimpsed a figure standing in ash, screaming words I couldn't hear. He looked familiar, but the music drowned him out. As the first house appeared through the haze, I whispered the verse Ellie had refused to let me play, each line clear and certain. The speakers carried it into the waking town. Every porch light began to flicker in time again, and for the first time, the song felt whole. If you ever hear an ice cream tune that makes your stomach twist before you remember its rhythm, close your windows, turn on every light. Do not hum along. Some melodies aren't meant for human throats. They're invitations, not entertainment. They need singers, and the world never runs out of children who know the words. If your town hears it again, record it. Post the notes here. Maybe together we can trace which route it's driving next, before another verse finds its new voice.